Hello, everyone. This is Emily Long. I am the author of Invisible Mothers and You Are Not Alone. And I am here today with Rachel Whalen. We are quasi neighbors in Vermont. And we're going to talk a little bit again, or Rachel is going to share some of her thoughts for us for our continuing Voices of Loss series about why she thinks it's important that we talk about our children and our loved ones who have passed away and grief and why it's important to continue these conversations. So, Rachel is the mama of Dorothy, and I will let her kind of take it from here.
Yeah.
Hello.
So we lost Dorothy in February. Dorothy was a stillbirth, and we lost her due to a placental abruption after I was diagnosed with severe preeclampsia. It has been about 7 months, and it's been tough. To say the least. It feels like the biggest understatement in the world to say that. But my husband and I feel like it's really important to continue and actually, for a lot of people, start this conversation about loss
Okay.
and grief. Um, because we found after Dorothy passed away, it's incredibly isolating to lose somebody you love. And it's incredibly isolating to lose your child, especially at birth. Um, People often don't equate that right away with a real loss. And I think anyone who's lost a child can speak to the fact that it's very much a real loss. A loss at any point in pregnancy is devastating. And losing Dorothy, I'd had two miscarriages previously, and losing Dorothy was just a blow to my life I didn't think I would ever experience. And it's just losing her really put in perspective for me how difficult it is to talk about loss.
Right.
I've lost family members before, but they were very often, grandparents or great aunts or uncles, and that there's a little bit more peace that comes with that usually, because those are people who have lived lives
Right.
and had experiences, and you have memories, and here you are, you're not just, we didn't know Dorothy per se, we never looked her in the eyes or heard her breathe or talked to her, or that she could hear, and but you're mourning something so much more because you're mourning a life that you imagined and a life you were hoping for. Um, and so it's just trying to help people to talk about that and know that it's okay to
Right.
talk about that.
And
And
that it's
that, I think,
okay to cry when you're talking about it.
yeah, it's okay to cry, and I might cry, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean I'm broken or damaged or
Right.
we need to stop the conversation. I'm gonna cry about my daughter, and just like anyone would cry about their child or their parent or their best friend, and I think after losing her, I just realized a lot of people were saying things to Mike and I and to our family. And I really, once kind of the initial shock wore off, I really started paying attention to what they were saying. And I realized they had no idea what to say. And in some cases, I don't even think they knew what they were saying
Right.
to us. And at first, you get mad because, how could they say such an insensitive thing? Or how could they say, how could they say that? Don't they know? And then I realized they don't. They
Right.
don't know.
They don't.
And, so Mike and I have kind of come into this unexpected, sometimes reluctant role. And Mike refers to it, my husband, as he calls us grief Sherpas. We just kind of are guiding people through this messy,
Right.
messy maze of grief and trying to help them to see, that it's okay to not know where you're going or what today's bringing or what
Right.
tomorrow will bring. There's no prescribed path. It's, it's just wherever we end up today.
Right.
And how can we help each other today and here where we are?
Right.
And sometimes I need someone to listen, and sometimes I need a shoulder to cry on, and sometimes I need to be angry, and sometimes I want to hear what others are thinking. And I've learned I just have to be really honest about that.
Right.
I can't ever expect people to know what I need. And so I think, it's just, this is the conversation we've started almost immediately after Dorothy passed away. And anyone who is willing to have the conversation with us, and we are willing to sit down and have it. And sometimes it's through writing, sometimes it's through social media, sometimes it's over the phone.
Right.
But however people are comfortable in talking about this,
Right.
we're here, and we've really tried to make that clear to our family and friends. So yeah.
I think that's true for a lot of folks. They want to talk about it, and they wish people would be willing to kind of muddle their way through those conversations, because they're not easy. They're not easy for anyone.
No. And
they
don't feel very good, and
right.
They're messy, and they there's awkward pauses, and you've got to let people have time to cry, and
Right.
and I think the other thing is they're not quick. I think sometimes people they start, we had a lot of people ask how we were doing afterwards, and you started to figure out really quickly who really wanted to know how you were doing and who just wanted you to say, I'm doing okay.
Right.
And move on, and
right.
and so that's the thing. If people were willing to talk to us about it, and really willing to sit down and take the time, you want to honor that, because
Right.
it takes a lot of bravery for somebody to step so far out of their comfort zone. And I'm just really trying to honor that with friends and family, as much as I can.
Right.
That being said, it can be exhausting because
Right.
you sometimes, I have days where it's, like I said, there's a little bit of reluctance with this. I have days where I'm maybe I just don't want to be the grieving mother today, and I don't want to be your grief Sherpa, and I don't want to carry you through this.
Right.
But at the same time, there's a little bit of a fear that if I don't honor this conversation today,
Right.
will they come back to have it? And so that's been really difficult for myself, and I know my husband as well. We're really, we want to have those conversations, but sometimes you feel like you're doing it more. Are you doing it for the other person? Or are you doing it for yourself? And finding that balance.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think kind of along those lines, sometimes it's like I don't think most of us necessarily expect other people to understand what it's like to lose your kid unless you've been there. Mm-hmm. But their willingness to want to is different. Like it sounds the same, but it's a very different, like your willingness to listen and say, well, what has this experience been for you and how can I support, versus like, oh, I don't understand this and it should be, so you should act differently to make it less uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. And I think that's, I've shared, in my own writing and through social media and through conversations with friends and coworkers, that it's okay to not know what to say.
Right.
But try to say something.
Right.
It's the and that's for me personally, because there are some people who would rather people just be silent than say the awkward thing.
Right.
I, for myself, my personal journey with grief, I would rather you just try to say something, because the silence is just, to borrow a phrase, just deafening. It's for myself. Like, I feel like if you're not saying anything, I feel like you don't maybe have that willingness to understand. But and that's the other thing. That being said, like I share we share, my husband and I, we share our story, we talk with people, but we have to really emphasize everybody's journey with grief is different,
Right.
and what works for me and what Mike and I have asked for might not be what you will ask your
Right.
friends and family for, and that's okay.
Right.
And I think that's what's important, is there's just no right way to do this. You have to
Right.
do what gives you peace and helps you find comfort, and you know
Right.
makes you feel like you can kind of get through the day.
Well,
So
and I think not only does everybody do it differently, but we may be in a different space day to day.
mhm.
Like today's the day I really want to talk about it. Today's the day I don't have the energy
Yeah.
to like have this conversation.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, for me, I say to people like you have to ask them where they're at. Like,
Mhm.
what would you like from me today? Or
Mhm.
how would I think sometimes we make it more complicated than it is. You just
Mhm.
to say to someone, hey, I'm here to support you, like what do you need today, or would you like to talk about your daughter, would you not
Yeah.
like to, would
Yeah.
you like me to use their name, would you prefer I didn't, like
Yeah.
I think like with anything you don't understand or when you're learning,
Mhm.
asking questions
Yeah.
is a
Yeah.
good approach.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and I'm a kindergarten teacher, and
Oh,
so I found myself using a lot of the tactics and tools I use with kids,
oh no.
with adults, because I was realizing, well, what would I, if something was wrong with one of my students and they wanted to talk about it, I would say to them, you need to let people know
Right.
what's wrong so they can help you, because we can't read your mind. And so I kind of turned that on myself, and I was like, you can sit here and you can be really, really mad at everybody for just not understanding.
Right.
Or, you know, I just chose to, yeah, and I have those days. I have those days where I just get really pissed off
Right.
at anybody who doesn't have to go through this.
Right.
Um, but then I have those days where I think, like, in most of my days, I'm thinking, I want, I want help. I want people around me.
Right.
And it's, you've got to make that decision for yourself. And it's also understanding who you really learn through grief, and you learn through tough times in your life who, who your true friends and your true support system are,
Right.
because those are the people who, on the days when you say, I don't want to talk about this today, I just
Right.
want to be misunderstood and I just want to be in this mood, those are the people who still come back the next day
And
to
ask
see,
again. Right.
ask again and see where you are.
Right.
Are you ready today? Are you not ready today? And they don't take it personally,
Right.
and they don't hide from you. So, and I guess that would just be, yeah, I don't like giving advice about this because, like I said, it's so personal, everybody's journey. But, you know, that is the one thing I think you is a little bit more universal, is I think
Right.
we've all realized who are the people we feel comfortable around and who are the people we feel supported by. Um, because it is a really, you become this kind of, I don't know, you're,
You're a
I,
teacher in all of your life now.
yeah, everywhere I go. And I think it's also, I realized after losing Dorothy how terrifying I was to people. Um, because, I mean, I'm going to be really honest, before I had a stillbirth, I didn't think that was a thing. I
a
mean,
lot, a lot of people don't know that that still happens.
yeah, and a lot. And all of a sudden I was there, and I, being, the person that I am, I, took to took to the research and wanted to learn about the statistics and, like, how is this happening? How often is this happening? And so when people came to talk to me, those first few weeks, I felt like I was just spitting out like all these like statistics at them. And I think I was just scaring the hell out of everybody because, you know, I think they wanted to like talk about like how I was doing. And I was like, oh my gosh, did you know this happens to 1 in 160,000 pregnancy? Like,
Right.
and my, and they're like, no, we don't want to, that's not what we came to talk about. But that's what I
That
need
was
to
your
talk about.
process.
That was where I was at the time.
Right.
You know, and I, I was like, if you guys are here and you want to learn, because I want people to know it's just, you know, when you lose a child in pregnancy, there's just, even though you know it's not your fault, there's this sense of shame
Right. Yeah.
that, sorry.
Okay. No, that's a huge piece of it that doesn't get talked about as much as I would like, you know, because
Yeah.
I think our world has this thing of like, well, women are made to do this, but what happens when it doesn't go the way that it's supposed to? And I say that in quotes because supposed to is not a
Yeah.
full phrase.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, like your whole vocabulary changes after losing somebody.
Right.
And, you know, I don't really believe in things that are meant to be or supposed to be anymore.
Right.
Things just kind of happen. But yeah, there was just this, you know, I had a lot of people ask me, how could this have happened?
Right.
And not in an accusatory way, but you couldn't help but think about it in an
Right.
like 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 how could you have let this happen, you know,
Right.
is what my exhausted, emotional, hormonal, grief-stricken brain would hear
Right.
is how could you have let this happen? And you just it's heartbreaking that just like you said, society tells us women are like this is what we're here to do, you know, like biologically speaking, you should be able to have a baby. And um I just throughout all of this, I've just met thousands of mothers
Yeah.
in their, you know, not face to face, but like through my writing and through the internet, the
Right.
glory of the internet. um,
It's a bit of a love-hate thing.
yeah, I know it's like a glory with quotes around it. You know, you just meet thousands of women and it didn't work
Right.
the way it was supposed to.
Right.
And so, how do you explain to thousands of women, and it's really millions of women,
Right.
how, you know, your body doesn't work the way the
Right.
textbook says it's going to, you know?
Right.
You think back to like, you know, I had these moments of dark humor after thinking back to like health class.
Right.
I was like 14 and they're trying to scare the bejesus out of you, like to never touch another person because you get pregnant in high
Right.
school. And I'm like,
That's not
like,
everybody's
yeah,
circumstance.
like it's actually not that, you know, for some people, it's like, God, you wish that that was what had happened.
Right.
If, you know, when the alternative is that you never, you know, are never getting to experience that. And
Right.
it's just such a weird place to be. And I'm just so happy to have found, you know, you and others that get it
Right.
because I mean, you and I, we live in a small state.
Right.
There's not a lot of people out there who share my experience that I've met yet.
Right. I think they're out there. I just think they're not talking. People don't
They're
talk
not
about it.
talking about it. And, you know, and that's the thing that is going to make all the difference is, you know, like we've tried going, you know, we live in central Vermont. We tried going to a support group here and we were the only people there. And we were like, okay, so Mike and I are sitting there, and it's like, okay, well, we've kind of talked about this. Like,
Right. We
we're
need
kind
some
of good. I know we're
other
pretty bad.
perspectives.
I know where I'm at. I'm not really interested in talking to him again. I'd like to see, like, because for me, like, I wanted to talk to other mothers. I
Right.
wanted to talk to, you know, he wanted to talk to other fathers. We wanted to talk to couples as a couple, like, and we just, you know, we're missing that. And so it's like if I can convince, or any of us can convince, like one more person to come out of the woodwork and just tell their story,
Right.
like that matters so much to me. And, you know, I've become kind of this, I feel like, confidant for people. I'm not sure if you have this experience too, where you're the lost mom. So
Right.
I'm gonna come to you with all my lost stories,
Right.
and there's like, I feel so honored to have that they feel that they can come to me.
Right.
And but then there's a part of you that wishes you didn't have to be the only person they could go to.
Right.
It could
it feels
be,
sometimes it feels like a lot of responsibility,
yeah,
which doesn't mean I don't want people to do it, but it's like, can we find more people to lean on each other instead
yeah.
of having one person or two people that we can lean on?
And I think it's for like for those days, like you said, where you're like, no, thanks, don't want to talk about it today. It's like then it's like, okay, there would be someone else for them to turn to,
Right.
and because that's the other thing. It's like I don't want to be the person who turns away someone in their time of need, but I have my times of need
Right.
too,
Right.
So,
What
um,
happens when you both need someone at the same time and you can't
yeah,
give that
yeah.
to each other?
And I think that's like a really big piece of, the part of couples grieving together
Right.
is, here's somebody who is having, I don't want to say parallel because it's not a parallel experience, but somebody who is having a similar experience to
Right.
you. And you have days where you just need everything from that other person.
Right.
And you're just crossing your fingers that today's the day that they can give that to you.
Right.
And you're hoping that they don't also need that from you.
Right.
Because if that's the case, then we're both screwed because
Right.
because this is just going to be a really long day. And
Right.
um so I think that's a piece that I'm really trying to, Mike and I are constantly working at, is checking in with each other and seeing where we're at in different days, and also having the ability to be honest with each other, which we are able to do at this point, and just say, I I can't do that today.
Right.
I'm I'm exhausted. I'm emotionally spent.
Right.
You know, I don't know where else you're gonna go, but try me tomorrow. Like,
Right.
and
Right.
it feels callous at the time, and it feels kind of cold, but I also don't want to. I don't want to kind of do it halfway. If
Right.
I'm going to be there for him or anyone and support them,
Right.
it's like I want to give you the best version of me. And so sometimes that means that you're just going to have to wait a little bit to get
Right.
that, because I can't be that person all the time.
Right.
You wouldn't expect anybody to be. So,
Well, and I think sometimes it can do more damage if you try to give when you don't have anything to give.
yeah,
And because it doesn't help either one of you,
no,
really.
no.
Um, so yeah, I find it interesting that I think there's so much more, many more communities online, and I wonder sometimes if it's just easier to talk when
Hmm.
you're not face to face.
Yeah,
And because it's interesting how much there is online and how in many regions that I've looked at or lived in or talked to, there isn't a lot of in-person support or it isn't consistent.
yeah,
Um, and it's just, and I'm always like, it'd be so much easier if we could like hook people up in person.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, in addition to the
I
online
think
stuff for the 2
this,
a.m. stuff, but
yeah, this is the first. I mean, I know we're doing this via the internet,
right.
but this is my first face-to-face conversation, like looking at another person to
Right.
talk about this. That's not, a close family member
Right.
or friend, or, somebody who's actually gone
Through.
through
Right.
an experience like I've been through. And I mean, it's like I said, it's been 7 months.
Right.
Like, that's a long time. And can you imagine if you didn't have
Right.
the internet in between? Like, I wouldn't have known
Yeah.
where to go, because you can't exactly just walk up and down the street and
Ask
like
everybody.
yell, like, have you had a stillbirth? Do you want to talk about that? Nobody,
Right. Although
you know,
maybe it'd be a good
that's,
thing if we did.
I mean, maybe we do need to do that. Maybe, but I'm like, until society catches up with me, I feel like I can't do that. So, I when I had Dorothy, I was really sick. I almost myself didn't
Right.
make it. And after I delivered, I actually had to deliver her in the ICU. And after I delivered her that night, um, I'd sent Mike away to go and sleep in a real bed, not in an armchair in a room full of beeping machines. And I was alone in the hospital bed, and was kind of in and out. And this nurse came in that night, and she wasn't my nurse, and I don't know where she came from or
Right.
what department she was with, but she came in and just knelt next to my bed and told me, I'm gonna cry talking about this because it's just, and she basically said, my first son was stillborn.
Yeah.
I had two children after that, and it's never left me.
Right.
And I just felt like that was the first time I could breathe, knowing that I wasn't gonna have to do this
Oh,
by myself, because like I said, it's so isolating, and you wonder, and you have that shame and that,
right.
why didn't this work out for me? And um, to have her come to me, and like I said, I had no idea where she came from. I never saw her again,
Mm-mm.
but that will never leave me. I mean, and basically her message to me is the message I've gotten from your book and from so many other places, was that I'm not alone in this.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I have to work a little bit to find those people, but I feel like the more we talk about this, the less I'm going to have to work
Right.
to find those people. And sorry, I'm going to get a tissue.
Totally loud.
The more we talk about this, the easier it's going to be to
Right.
find those people. And they're not going to have to swoop in
Right.
in the middle of the night.
Right. Come
And,
in undercover and
even the way it made me realize too, even the way she said it, it was almost like this secret, and you wondered like how many people has she shared this with. Yeah. And I think part of it too, it's a generational thing.
Definitely.
Because stillbirth used to be, it's scarily common now, but it used to be a lot more common. And
right.
I've heard a lot of stories from people whose, parents who are no longer with us, and they had children who were stillborn,
Right.
and they never spoke of that experience.
Right.
Like it was the kind of thing they found out from like an aunt 5 years after their parents passed away. Like, and I think that, one of those parts of the love-hate relationship with the internet is we are a little bit braver to talk about the things that are hard. And I think that this is we are currently living in a generation society that will talk about the tough stuff.
Right.
Right now it's kind of in the comfort of a keyboard.
Right. It gave us an avenue to kind of break that dam open, because you're right. 40, 50, 60 years ago, they were told to just go home and forget.
Yeah.
And they didn't have funerals for them and
no.
Those sort of things. And so I think, and it's interesting because if you do, like I have gone and spoken about, my books or my work or whatever, and almost invariably somebody, male or female, will come up afterwards and say, I had a miscarriage or a stillbirth 40, 50 years ago and I've never talked about it. Like, this is the first time I've talked about it in 50, 40 years.
Yeah.
Or they'll say their name and say, I haven't spoken their name in 45 years. It's amazing to me.
It is, because my mission every day is to say my daughter's name,
right.
is to say Dorothy's name,
right.
and let the world know she existed.
Right. And I think, if they're...
I can't imagine feeling like I had to keep that to myself, and so I just don't want people to be afraid of that.
Right.
It's a huge risk. It's a huge risk.
Right.
And there are guaranteed to be some times where you're going to say your child's name, or you are going to say, I had a miscarriage, I had a stillbirth, my baby died 3 days after they were born, and I and you're there are going to be times where you're not going to get anything
Right.
back from people. It's just
It's true.
it's just the nature of it. But I guarantee you, for every one person who kind of stares at you or doesn't say anything, there are 10 people who will have a connection or a story, or just be grateful that
Right.
you shared that. And that's my thing, is like, you just have to, it's such a risk and it's so hard, but you know,
Right.
there are people out there who understand and who can relate to what you're going through. And even if they can't relate, they care. They want, like you said earlier, that willingness to want to understand.
Right.
Not that they want to necessarily be in our shoes,
Right.
because I feel like
Right. And
you know,
I don't think any of us would want
nobody
them to be like.
nobody wants to be where we're at, and we don't want to be where we're at.
Right.
But the idea that they want to understand how that feels or what that feels like, I think.
Or, yeah. Even to just know a little bit, try and understand our experience. Like, okay,
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand your perspective right now.
Well, and trying to understand that, the things that can, trigger you, like to understand that, to walk through the grocery store and see a mom with their new baby, that's gonna send us over the edge. And maybe not on the outside, but I
Right.
can guarantee you we're all just like plummeting
Right.
on the inside.
And,
And so,
we're heading into that season where there are a lot more of those triggers.
oh
That
yeah.
holiday and I tell everybody, it's not just Christmas, it's Halloween all the way through New Year's.
Yeah. Basically, I mean, here it's a time of year that's about family and children, and
Right.
and and it's a time when, most of us look back on those, we have those memories of our childhood and those
Right.
things we were, we dream of passing on to our own children, and that's not going to happen.
Right.
And that's so heartbreaking. And it's, and it's Christmas cards showing up in your mailbox, and
Yeah.
and it's everybody sitting around the table talking about what they're thankful for, when you have days that you are just scraping to find something to
Right.
be grateful for. And it's, a load of kids showing up on your doorstep on October 31st and
Right.
just being like so adorable, but then you shut the door
Right.
and just, I
Cry.
mean, cry. Yeah, because there's, and it's having people understand that that's just kind of what our lives are like,
Right.
you know? And it doesn't, like I said before, it doesn't mean I'm broken or I'm damaged.
Right.
And I think that's a piece too. I don't know if it's an American thing. I don't know if it's like just where the world is now, but we're just still so afraid to be vulnerable.
Right.
And I understand why. I mean, I understand it from so many standpoints why, but
Right.
I just, I just want people to know it's okay. It's okay. It's okay that I, went to a concert for my birthday and cried through pretty much the whole thing. um, it didn't mean I didn't enjoy myself.
Right.
Just means, that what I'm getting from experience is different now.
Right.
And, and that's okay. Like, I've begun to accept that I'm the crying lady.
Yeah.
Because I do. I mean, I'm a sensitive person, and I can't think about my daughter without, having, these moments of just so much emotion. And I also think I have these moments with so much emotion because it's not something I get to talk about every day. You know, I can talk with my husband, but again, you know, it's that give and take.
Right.
I can't talk to him about everything every day because
Right.
he needs to exist too.
Right.
um, and I feel like sometimes, you know, with he and I, it's like if we begin talking about it, it's like we could just stay home from work and do that all day.
Right.
Is sit on the couch and cry and laugh and cry and laugh and sleep and
Right.
cry, and, you know, and I want I want to be able to talk about it more so that, you know, not that I won't have an emotional reaction, but so that maybe, I don't know, I don't have to turn into like a sobbing, blubbering mess. And because you know, maybe it can become a little bit more of a commonplace conversation.
Right.
And, you know, I'm just so appreciative of the opportunity to talk about this and share, you know, my story and listen to others' stories, you know. Sitting and listening to your first interview with Danielle was just another person that I've, you know, I feel like I know so well through her
Right.
writing. And to then like see a face and see, you know, her talking about Jensen and you know,
Right.
and being able to share his story, it's just like I'm so happy for her and I'm so happy for us that we have a
Right.
place to do this. And you know, I just it's wonderful to have this. I'm just, you know, gonna keep working until this is something I can do with everyone and
Right.
not just
Right.
not just other members of this community.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think it's like anything. The more you're exposed to something, the easier it is. And so my philosophy is if we just keep talking about it, eventually society is going to be like, oh, this is just normal part of life because it is. Because
Yeah.
loss and grief is a normal part of life. Nobody gets out without that unless
No.
you have no connection to anybody.
Yeah.
And
And that's a whole other issue.
right, that's a whole other issue.
Just to talk
And
about
so
again.
it's like, you know, if we can stop running away from it, it can just be this thing, and then all you have to do is turn around and there's someone
Yeah.
who's willing to have those what right now are difficult conversations, but don't necessarily have to be.
Yeah.
They can just be conversations.
Yeah. Yeah, we can just, you know, because there are some days like I am able to very matter of factly talk about what I've been through, but I find that that's with the people who I've had those conversations with so
Right.
many times before that it's not this raw,
Right.
open wound, you know, like you know, it's just this is a conversation we have. We talk about Dorothy, we talk about, you know, what her life means to us, and it's a part of our lives, and it's regular everyday conversation, just like everybody else's child,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I talk about people's kids all day, every day with them, coworkers, my students' parents, you
Right.
know. And you know, going back to work after I took some time off after Dorothy passed away and going back to work after, it was like I just could not bear to listen to anyone talk about their own kids
Right.
because I didn't have the same I felt like I didn't have the same privilege.
Right.
And then somebody one day was talking about their experience being pregnant with their child, and I just was like, yeah, that happened with me too when I was pregnant with my daughter.
Right.
And I was like, I'm just gonna find ways
Right.
to put her into the conversation and remind people. And I think the more I've done that, the more people have realized it's okay. This is okay. We can talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the message. Like, it's okay to have these conversations. It's okay to have all the emotions. It's okay to be uncomfortable and And it's okay
Yeah.
to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. And oops. Sorry, I'm back. Did that?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Battery's low. But I just yeah, I agree with you on that so much. And yeah, it's just I don't know, I feel like it's this role, like I said, we've all stepped into reluctantly. I think, you know, if you really could give any one of us a choice, we would not choose to be the grief Sherpas
Yeah.
of the world.
I don't think it's something anybody wants to seek out.
um, and some of us are more willing than others to take on that role, and I respect whatever decision people make that they feel is best for them. Um, but it's that's the other thing people have to understand. It's what I know. Well, you said like when we make, like maybe people will be less uncomfortable, and I know I do make people uncomfortable. I make them uncomfortable when I cry. I make them uncomfortable when I'm just very blatantly say words like, well, it's like when people ask how many kids I have, and I say, well, I had a daughter, but she was stillborn at 30 weeks, and it's like, oh, well, like, you kind of see them like, well, I didn't ask you that. It's like,
Right.
no, but you did.
Right.
You don't
Don't
know
ask
it,
if you
but
don't
you
want the
did.
answer.
Yeah, and so, I'm realizing it's like, and then you get these looks like you meant to make them uncomfortable, and it's like, I don't want to make you uncomfortable. I don't want this to be my answer. I wish my answer was something totally
Right.
quote unquote normal, but
Right.
I've got it. My family is unique, as everyone's family is unique,
Right.
and this is our very unique situation, and it sucks. And that's the other thing. I feel like I just want people to know, like, when someone in grief comes to you and is upset, it's okay to just say to them that this sucks.
Right.
Like, you don't need to make this better.
You just
You
gotta be
don't
real
need to
with
help
people.
me find
Right.
the silver lining. I don't need to know, like, the good in this. That's not what I'm coming to you for. I'm not coming to you to find, like, how my daughter's death is actually a blessing. Sometimes I'm coming to you to just be like, this sucks. And I just want you to say, yeah, this really sucks.
Right.
It really just does. And that's all there is to it. And then
Right.
I feel like if we could just have that conversation sometimes, like it would be a huge load off of those of us who are grieving,
Right.
And that doesn't go just for child loss. That's for when your parents, when you lose parents, when you lose partners, spouses, grandparents, anybody. I mean, death sucks. It
Right.
sucks to lose the people you love.
Right.
And it, but it feels so much better to have somebody acknowledge that.
Mm-hmm.
And I found that when people can just acknowledge where I'm at, it's like that's all I needed from them.
Right.
Not everybody. Some people don't get off that easily.
Right. But I mean, that's a huge piece of it. Like that acknowledgement piece is hard.
Yeah.
When you don't, I mean, it's not that we need people running around all the time, sort of like patting us on the back and saying, yes, you're this, but it's like when the opportunity comes up, like recognize
Yeah.
that we're mothers and that
Yeah.
we have children and or, or we lost a partner or we lost a parent or, just acknowledging what's happening.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to turn a light on because I realized I'm in the darkness. Sorry.
It's all right. You're good.
Figuratively and literally. No, I'm just kidding. Well, and that's, I feel like, another piece of this, too, that I struggle with. I'm a very sarcastic person, and I have a kind of a dark sense of humor at times.
I knew I
And
liked you.
there are parts of this, not that it's like hysterical and I'm just like laughing all the time over here, but there's parts of this that are kind of comical and like in like the old like Shakespearean tragic
Right.
comedy sense, and I think that is one of those things I'm just having to accept is going to maybe take a little bit longer, is
Right.
people to see the and it's not humor. It's just like, I don't know. They're,
Irony and
yeah,
weirdness and
yeah. And I mean, you have these moments. It's like, I don't know. I remember my husband and I go to therapy weekly, and one of the first weeks we went to therapy, she was like, "What do you want to talk about?" And I was like, "I don't want any more food to come to my house." And she was like,
right.
"What?" And I was like, "I don't want any more casseroles." And she was
Right.
like, Okay, let's talk about that." And then I just started, like, I went off on this rant about, and oh my gosh, people are going to see this who gave me food, and I'm so grateful. I really, really am. But at that moment,
Right.
it just seemed so crazy to me that my daughters died. And this isn't just for me. This is like in general. Someone you love has died, and you're going to bring them a macaroni and cheese that they then have to clean the pan.
Right.
Like, not only did you bring me a ton of food that I have to decide that I want to eat all of,
Right.
but now I also have to do dishes. Like, this is not helpful.
Right. At
This
the
was
very least, bring it in a disposable pan.
exactly
Little
like
advice.
that is okay. There's not a lot of advice with this. That is one piece of advice. And also restaurant gift certificates or gift certificates for takeout. Huge, huge help. Or just ask somebody if they need anything at the grocery store.
Right.
Because there was, I think, after, if you really want to look at it from a psychological standpoint, I had had such a loss of control. The
Right.
one thing I could control was what I was eating. And
Right.
I couldn't even control that because I felt so guilty about not eating all the food that was brought to me.
Right.
And I tried complaining about this to, like, friends or even my family, and they were like, "Well, they just want to help. Just let them help." And I'm like, "But I'm the sad one. Like,
Right.
I'm the
It's
one
not helpful unless it's needed.
and I'm the one who's sad. Like, why don't I get to just, and then you realize, like, oh my God, is this my life now? Is just giving others what they need and just trying to understand constantly. I mean, and that is part of being a person and being a
Right.
human, and a friend and a family member is they need to try to understand and empathize with everyone. But um yeah, it was just a really weird part of that. And the suggestions people would give after, it was 3 days after Dorothy died. I was still in the hospital because I was still really sick, and I was miserable. And it was miserable for many reasons,
Right.
and one of the doctors came in and commented on how I was kind of in a grumpy mood today. And I just gave her this look that I don't
That
think I've given anyone since I was like 13 years old. It was literally like, I just couldn't even believe. And her suggestion to Mike and I was to go to the healing garden at the hospital, and maybe that would make us feel better. And at that moment, I wanted nothing to do with the healing garden, except
right.
maybe, like, I kind of wanted to go and, like, uproot the whole healing
Right.
garden.
I was gonna
Because,
say a little destruction might feel
yeah,
good
I
at
know,
that moment.
like, I will go visit your healing garden and it will not exist anymore. Like, and that's, I think, was like one of the first moments after she left. I turned to Mike and I was like, I just want to, or I was like, looked at him and he was like, let's go just destroy the healing garden. And I laughed and I was like, okay, I'm going to laugh again. That's good. That was a relief. Like, when you get that first one out. And, and I just was like, oh my God, this is just the most bizarre experience I'm ever going to go through.
Right.
It's like, I've just lost my daughter, but would you like to visit the healing garden? It's like, no, no,
Sometimes
I
I
can't.
feel like it'd be more appropriate for them to have punching bag rooms than it would be
Yeah.
stupid healing gardens.
Or like just a room full of like glass vases to break, like
Right?
something. I just felt this incredible urge to just, because you're angry,
Right.
like
Dishes you can break and shit like that.
exactly. Like you just want to, you're mad, that's like one of those parts of grief you go through. And I still have those days where I just get really mad. And, I'm not going to lie, there were sympathy cards that came in the mail from friends who talked about their pregnancy.
Right.
Like, I mean, my daughter has just passed away, and you are choosing to fill an entire note card with the details of your current pregnancy.
That's helpful.
Oh my God. This is going in the trash. Like, I cannot
Right.
let this live in my house any longer.
Right.
And, when I first read like one of the cards that we got that was like that, I just looked at Mike and I was like, I want this gone. And he was in a kind of a gracious mood that day because usually he's much quicker to be, like screw them kind of attitude. And he was like, no, well, she's trying to connect with you. And I was just like, no. He took the card and I found it like later that day. I like sought it out and I like ripped it up and I was like, no, it's really not going to live with me anymore.
Right.
I don't want it. And
Right.
yeah, so it's like things like that, being able to talk about with somebody, and also realizing more than just you is going to hear this,
Right.
it's,
Well, I think it's
those are the things people don't realize. We talk
right.
about, there's a lot of parts of grief we talk about kind of over and over again, but I feel like the things I want to talk about with like loss and grief are from my own personal experiences, not just these kind of blanket sayings like,
well, right.
I don't know. It's an interesting, it's a weird club to belong to. That's what it feels like. It's like this weird club and no one really wants to be a member, but we're happy to be here for each other.
Right.
But again, if somebody could like revoke our membership,
That'd be great.
Like we'd be out the door so fast. Like
right.
And you wouldn't look back because, you would have a chance at this life that you had, the life you kind of would have, the life you'd imagined.
Right.
Not this life instead,
Right.
And that's the acceptance part of grief. It's not really so much accepting that the person's gone. I mean, there is that, but it's accepting your new normal.
Right. Life isn't going to be the same, and this is what
no. Yeah, I mean, basically, my life is split up into before Dorothy and after Dorothy.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be that way.
Right.
And I just want all the people who still haven't said anything to me, who still aren't sure what to say, to know that it's not too late, I think is another important piece. There's no time limit on this.
Right.
I will still be sad tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's not going to end.
You'll still want to hear about her 10 years from now.
Exactly. Like, she will be my daughter for the rest of my life. So I will gladly talk about her for the rest of my life. And, and my husband says it so well to people, like they are like, oh, well, I didn't want to say the wrong thing, or I didn't want to remind you. And Mike's like, the worst has happened to me. Like, you can't actually make this worse by saying words. Like, like that's not going to make this like, oh, things were bad and now they're really bad because you said that. Like, no, it's not. That's not how it goes. We've got to let each other know that it's just okay. And yeah.
Well, because it's like, okay, if someone doesn't know how to support you or me or whoever, someone who's been through this loss, well, not saying anything and staying away is not going to help you learn how to support them. No. It's okay to come and say, I don't know how to help you. What can I do? There you go.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I had some people who really, well, and I think the other thing is, I think they think you're not going to notice that they've disappeared. But you're so attuned at that point to everything that's missing from your life. And you do notice who's not there. And, I've confronted some people, not, in an angry way, but just have said to them, you disappeared when my daughter died. And I have no idea where you went. And I have no idea what you were thinking. And and they'll say, oh, well, I didn't know what to say. I was scared. And I'm like, well, that's great, but I had no idea.
Right.
And it really isn't my job to sit and
Right.
gas, just like it's not your job to sit and gas.
Right.
So if I'm going to sit here and like pour my heart out, I think you can at least just say to me, like, I don't know what to say.
Right.
It's literally like or I just couldn't talk about it. It was so painful. And it's like, okay, for me too. So,
Right.
like, I want people to know that there's literally nothing you can say to make it worse if you are trying. And I'm really picking my words carefully there, because there are things you can say that can hurt.
Right.
I'm not saying you're not going to walk away from, like, you don't get a get out of jail free card. You
Right.
can say just anything without consequences. Like,
Right.
everybody has consequences for their actions and their words. But it's really more, at least if you say the wrong thing, then I have the ability to say to you, that was not good. That was like
Here's what might have been more helpful.
Here's what would have been better.
Right.
And I think and I've had some people, like, my sister-in-law and others, I feel comfortable enough to say to them, like, that's actually not helpful when you say that.
Right.
And she's wonderful, because she's like, I didn't know, and now I know, and now I'm gonna not say that again, or now I understand where you are in that place. Right. And so it's like I said before, for every one person who just doesn't get it, there are people who want to care and want to understand. And unfortunately, it feels unfair sometimes that we have to be the ones to start the conversation, but we're the ones with the knowledge, we're the ones with the experience. And it's just, I have days when, I wish I could have like a cooler cause to work for. Like, I don't know, like something that, like, I don't know. I just sit here and I think, like, I wish I was raising money and awareness for something a little more fun than stillbirth.
Right.
It's like essentially just an incredibly depressing topic, and there's really no positive side to it.
Right.
But I also understand that this is where life has led me, and I didn't get to pick my cause.
Right.
My cause picked me. It doesn't mean I can't pick another cooler cause later on, but right now this is mine.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think that's the thing. It's, it's just not a very fun topic.
No.
And I get why people don't want to talk to us sometimes, but I don't know. It's like, if we can listen to each other talk about sometimes very asinine things, I feel like I deserve a couple minutes of your time to talk about something real.
Right.
And I'm guilty of talking about asinine things too. There's a space.
We need that too.
Yeah, we do need that. I had a friend who I remember being in the hospital. I called her up, and she was like, I was like, hey, she was like, hi. And she wasn't really saying anything. And I was like, did you hear? And she's like, yeah, I heard. Are you okay? Or, she was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like, yeah. And she was like, so did you read that thing about Kim Kardashian? And I was like, oh my God, my life can be normal. And it was like, and not just anybody could have gotten away with that.
Right.
And this is one of my very best friends, but it was like, I needed that too. Like, right. I did need somebody to just talk to me about stupid stuff, right. And realize, because those are the things that made you realize, like, life was going to continue. Right. The world will keep on spinning, and you can join the world, or you can shut yourself away, and you don't have to do one exclusively.
Right. You can do both.
You can have days where you shut yourself away from the world. That is what Netflix is for.
Big fan.
That is what delivery is for. You know, but you know, you sometimes you do have to you and you don't have to do it right away, and there's no timetable on it, but you are doing yourself a service when you try to step out in the world and just try to find some piece of quote unquote normal, because at a time when nothing feels like it will ever be normal again, you'll have days when you never really forget, but you do kind of forget for a minute that like your life,
where it's not in the forefront, but
yeah, it's
back
like
here.
it's back there, and it's never far away. It's always very quick to retrieve, very easy to trigger. But you do have these moments, and I'm having them more and more. The more time has gone by, and the more healing and talking that I've been doing, where it's like for just a quick moment, I can almost forget.
Right.
And not that I want to, but it's like, it just shows you that there is more in the world. And it's just accepting that it's maybe not the world you thought you were going to have. And it's okay if that takes you years, decades. I mean, whatever. And that's the other thing is, it doesn't matter to me how long it takes you to get there.
Right.
You know, and I'm speaking to people who've been through grief. I want them to know it's going to be okay.
Right.
It's not going to be all okay. I can't like make that promise, but it's going to be okay. And I think that's the thing is like, that's another thing you have to accept is that life's now just at its best sometimes only really feels okay.
Right.
Like you may, we're people, people who have suffered loss are people who some days have to work really hard to find the joy in the world.
Right.
And that doesn't mean we need your help. Others. It doesn't mean we need you to point it out to us, but it's, if we need your help, I feel like we'll ask. And if we don't ask if you can help. Don't just blindly offer all of your suggestions. Because, and I think this is, I don't know, there's something very freeing about being able to say this and kind of say this to the people that I want to say it to, and maybe they'll see it and maybe they won't. But it's not coming from a place of, I want them to know, I guess it's like I want them to see that I'm smiling and I'm laughing and I'm not, angry and like just so fed up with them. It's just, but I'm also not going to sit here, I've got two full-time jobs. I have a full-time job of, my career being a teacher. And then I also have this new full-time job that's called being a grieving mother. And, there are days when it's like you totally empathize with, those little Greek ladies who wear the black and the veil and for the rest of their lives, and you're like, yeah, no, I totally get that. Like, and, in some ways I'm like, maybe we should do something like that. Just like a mark that like
little sticker you can put on for certain days and take off when you're okay.
Really, really sad. You see my outfit? It's a very sad outfit. I'm just, be careful, like, and I don't know. I want people to know that I'm always on some level now sad, but that's not.
It's not all of it.
It's not all of it. And it's just that takes up a little bit more of my being than it used to. And that's what life does to you. You fill in the holes, the spaces fill up differently over time,
Right.
when you're young and you don't have a lot to worry about, you know, life is kind of pretty awesome, you know, and your worries are smaller for most people. But then the more experiences you have, the more worry, the more anxiety, the more fear, the more sadness you have in you. And that's not all of you.
I think we become, it's almost like we get more multi-dimensional. We have
Yeah.
more pieces to us. And some of those are sad, and some of those are angry, and some of those are joyful, and some of those are grateful. And like, it's just like we become more complex because life, that's just what life does.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is a more aspect that we get more complex.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that your kitty? Sorry.
No, that's
cat.
I think it's the outside. There's some kids out there.
Oh, okay. Sorry, guys.
They're being very loud.
Sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to ruin this.
Okay. It's very natural. I want these to be very informal, so.
Yeah, well, I feel like I've helped you there. People get to watch my crying face and my wiping my nose, but this is what it really looks like.
Right.
And that's the thing. I mean, this is what, and I'm grateful for that. Like, this is what it really looks like. And this is what I really am like on a daily basis. I'm laughing and joking and choking back tears. And, you know, and I'm also like I'm in the middle, you know.
Right.
I have moments in the middle where I'm not one end or the other, just like we all do. It's just, you know, you spend a little bit more time on one of the extremes than the other.
Right.
And that's all. And I don't know. I'm just day by day. I don't use a lot of cliches, but that one does apply day by day.
Right.
There are a lot of cliches that I would like to see done away with, but take that.
That's like a whole nother hour talk.
Yeah, I know. I just feel like I write them down and I've made a list of them and I just want to like slip them under people's doors and like, don't tell me everything happens for a reason. Don't tell me that time heals all. Like, you know.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. It just, time is just time. It passes. Right. And
what you do at the time that makes the difference.
Exactly. And, you know, and we all have different decisions we're making and different ways we want to live our lives after our children. And I think we need to honor where everybody's at with that, you know, because some of us want to sit here and talk about it and some of us aren't ready yet.
Right.
And that's okay. But I really want to, you know, if you're like on the fence and you're not sure if you want to talk about it,
right,
I'd like you to come over to the side where we talk about
Just poke your head over and see what it's like.
I really think I just really don't think it's a decision you would ever regret, is trying to talk about it. And I know it takes a lot to get there. And
right.
I know it's easier when you have a good support system. Mm-hmm. And I'm really fortunate to have that. You know, my husband and I live in an amazing community. We have an amazing family, amazing friends, and I can't imagine what it's like to go through something like this without a support system. Mm-hmm. And so I guess to those people, if you feel like you don't have a support system, there is one out there. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're here. And again, just poke your head over the fence. We won't make you stay.
We'll let you come and go as you need to.
Yes, we'll let you leave if you need to. You don't have to say anything. And that's the other thing. You don't have to say anything. Sometimes just listen to others. And you might have that day where you feel like, I mean, I've done some sharing, like through your Share Your Mother's Heart group. This past Mother's Day, I did do some sharing there. But a lot of the groups that I'm part of on Facebook and online, I really am just kind of a watcher and a listener.
Right.
And I know that that's okay. It did feel a little voyeuristic at first, but I've gotten over that. And every day it's like someone pops up on the comment wall and is like, okay, I've been part of the group for 3 years and I'm ready to tell my story today. And it's like, and that's okay, you know? Okay. Nice. That's I think what's nice about those communities is nobody's like, well, it's, nobody's judging you.
Right.
The fact that you've
No.
been a member for 3 years and now we're just, nope, that's fine.
Right.
And if you just want to join and listen to other people or read what they say or, look at the quotes and the pictures, and that's great,
Right.
even if you just, if that's what helps you,
right.
You just got to do what feels good for you and take care of yourself in the best way you can,
Right.
which isn't easy.
No.
Ever.
No, it's not easy for anybody.
Yeah, no.
So we're all in the same boat there.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. It's like I feel like a more extreme case of that sometimes. Right. And then some days I'm like, it's, I hear other women's stories, I hear other family stories, and you find yourself like, even with everything you've been through and how terrible it's been for you, I find myself sometimes thinking like, oh, I can't imagine going through what they're going through though. And I remember sharing that with my therapist one time, and she was just like, she goes, that will never cease to amaze me. It's like when people can reach like the darkest depths of their days, right. And like they just so full of sorrow and like despair, and they're always thinking, but at least I didn't have to go through that. Right. And they're like, oh, I can't imagine having to go through what they've gone through, and this like sense of empathy, like, oh, my heart just goes out to them. And it's like, and she was basically like, and I'm here to remind you that like you're sad too. Like you can be sad too, and
you don't have to be the worst of the worst to be have your feelings be valid.
Exactly. Like you don't have to be the saddest. You can just be sad. Right. Or you can just be upset, or you can just and that's the other piece or one of the many other pieces. I keep saying that's the other piece, like there's just two sides to this, but one of the many other pieces is don't compare losses. Don't compare your loss to others to try to prove that it's worse, or don't think that your loss isn't as significant.
Right.
If you have a miscarriage and I'm speaking here in terms of pregnancy and infant loss, if you have a miscarriage at 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, and you don't even know maybe that you were pregnant, and then you have, you lose your baby at 37 weeks due to a stillbirth, you've still had a loss.
Right.
And we're not here to say, well, my loss was worse than your loss, so I get more time here, or that's not what it is. A loss is a loss, and we're all mourning kind of the same thing, and the fact that, we're mourning the fact that we'll never get to know our children.
Right.
We all have that. That's not unique to any one of our losses. That's, I think, the same thing we're all mourning. So, yeah. But
so is there any last sort of thing that you can think of that, okay, I want to kind of as we wrap it up? I mean, there's obviously.
No, I know. And
conversations could go on forever, but.
I know. And I feel like I've just been, there's moments when I feel like I've been rambling, but I'm just trying to, I just cannot say enough that, to all of the mothers and families and fathers, and I'm going to emphasize fathers because
you're important.
You matter. You exist. Yes. This is yours too. And families, grandparents, aunts, uncles. You're not alone in this, and you don't have to be. You can choose to feel that way, and that's totally your right. And I have those days too, like I said, where you have days where you just want to be kind of like a sullen, petulant teenager and just feel really misunderstood and blare your music and cry. But you don't have to be alone. And we're here. And we is whoever you need, It's you, it's me, it's people online, there are support groups out there. There are people out there, and maybe it's just you taking a moment to say to somebody, I had a stillbirth. And hearing that, I mean, you would be so shocked I mean, I still never ceases to amaze me, you know, after I had my miscarriages. I mean, I didn't know you weren't supposed to talk about miscarriages when I had my first one. Like, no one shared that with me.
Right. Well, good. I'm glad they didn't, because we should talk about it.
And but at the same time, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that I had a miscarriage. Like, I
Right.
can't believe I screwed this up. Like, and I remember saying, like, people are like, oh, you were out? Were you sick? And I was like, well, no, I was pregnant and I had a miscarriage. And like, everybody was like, oh my God, I know I had one in between my first and my second. And I was like, wait a second. Like,
It's
why
so
have you not,
common.
why have you not talked about this? And then I'm like, well, I've never actually asked. And I was also realizing it isn't, like I said, I'm not gonna walk up and down the street and ask people, have you had a stillbirth or pregnancy loss that you want to talk about right now? Um, and so it's it's that piece that, you know, you're not alone in this. You can talk about it. And if anybody ever is making you feel like you're misguided in your attempts to talk about it,
Right.
my secret for you is that they are a little bit misguided themselves.
Right.
And not, that doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just
Right.
means that they are lacking the education
Right.
and the knowledge to be empathetic to your situation.
Right.
And so don't give up on them
Right.
right away. Some people you do kind of have to let go over a
Right.
certain amount of time, because toxic relationships aren't good for anybody. But give people a chance. Know that there's not a time limit for you or for others. You know, if somebody wants to come back to you 10 years later and say that they're sorry that they weren't there for you,
Right.
let them in. Even if it's just to say they're sorry, and then you don't have to talk to them again, but hear them out, because
Right.
they're taking a risk. So it's just kind of understanding where it's trying to assume the best intentions
Right.
in people, which is hard to do
Right.
sometimes, a lot of the time. But they're there. People are generally, and I really do believe people are generally just kind and good-hearted and mean well.
Right.
And is and they say really stupid things sometimes, but I think if they knew how it made you feel, and if they knew that it was how stupid it sounded,
Right.
I don't think they would say it again, because nobody
Right.
wants to be that person, you know. And
Right.
so I think it's important. It's just important to talk when you feel ready, if you feel ready. And you don't have to talk like this. You don't have to talk
Right.
forever.
Yeah, nobody has to come on video with me if they don't want to.
But just, I don't know, even sometimes just writing it down, I
Right.
found is really powerful. Because sometimes when you write it down, it's like, oh, there, I got it out. It's not trapped in me anymore. Now maybe I can try to tell this to somebody, or share this with somebody, or even just say, like, I can't say these words out loud, but I wrote them and I want you to read them. So there's ways to do it, and there's people to help.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
great. I think
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me.
Yes,
And,
thank you.
we'll be posting this. It's probably hopefully tomorrow.
Okay.
And yeah. So
Sounds good.
let me end this recording here. So
Yeah.
thank you again.
Yeah, you're welcome.